Hey everyone, welcome to SAHARA Strong, a web series on women empowerment where we feature women who have broken barriers, overcome obstacles, and made significant impact in their fields. Joining me today is Sujata Subramaniam, who's the head of intellectual property at Roche Diagnostics. Suja, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me. This is a great forum, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts.
It's great to have you here, and looking forward to this conversation. Let's start with, what does women empowerment mean to you?
I have struggled with this definition for God knows how many years, because for me, the word empowerment means that there's somebody in power who is allowing somebody else to do something that may perhaps they should already have the right to do. So the way I have reconciled that word with the definition in my mind is to say the power has to come from within. So empowerment to me really means the ability to give the power to yourself and the permission to yourself to do what you think is right for you. Now, and I also understand that as a society, we do have these power dynamics. So for me, empowerment also means creating that environment where women can have the power to do what is right for them.
So true. The words sound simple enough, but that's such a profound seismic shift and a paradigm change because, why should we have to be empowered by someone? It has to truly come from within. And you mentioned something about the societal norms and the general culture that we are in and hopefully changing soon. But I'm curious to know, what are some of the biggest challenges that women face in today's society?
Do we have an hour to talk about this?
I know it's a tricky question, right?
Yes.
It's like, where do we start and where do we go?
It's really interesting because I have two daughters, and one of them is 21, and we often have these conversations between her friends and me, right? And in some respect, some of her friends are dating, so we have these conversations, and I'll tell you where the story is going. Because 30 years ago, when I was 21, okay, my life was, I think, in some respect, very simple, right? My expectations from my family was, get your college degree and then we will get you married off as a girl, right? Over time, I think we have, and for the better, right? We have made sure that our girls get educated, they have a voice, they are able to make their own choices. But in some respect, we have also made their lives a little complicated, because on one hand, we are giving all this ability for our girls to think independently, but I feel sometimes that the rest of the society has not moved. So women today are still expected to, be the child bearers, which is nature, right? You cannot prevent that, but also be the primary provider for the family. And I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges, in my opinion, that the women face, which is, if I don't want to cook, I am shamed and made to feel guilty that I'm a bad wife, a bad mom, a bad mother-in-law, or even a bad daughter, right? Whereas if my husband decides not to cook, it's always like, oh, it's okay, we will do takeout. So I think some of these challenges is conditioning, in my opinion, but also the fact that we have made such big strides in empowering, quote unquote, our girls and young adults, but we have not put in the same effort in moving others with this empowerment. So it's a real, I see that as a shift where we need to have a little bit of a different thinking, that we've put in so much of effort on one area. How do we now bring the rest of the society to at par where one effort has been put in?
I agree 100% with it. It's almost like we've kind of built we have the vision, we've built the top line, but now we need to raise the foundations for the rest of the infrastructure to kind of come about and support that, so it remains there. It doesn't become one of those trends or fads that came and went, right? And as you said, on the previous question around how does something like this come from within, for this generation, for the next generation to see that that's truly possible, it has to be a societal change and not something that's just topical, that's happening in certain homes and certain communities. So I agree
Right.
100% with you. Tell me about how can women, and this is something that comes around as a subject that women face more often, but I can vouch for this, it's the imposter syndrome. It's not just limited to women, right? I face that. I mean, I think you and I talked about me facing this syndrome, hosting this show, which is all about women empowerment. But, coming to the point, how can women overcome that syndrome? And also, a lot of self-doubt, right, which is related, that often tends to hold them back. And this is an oft-quoted data point. If a women applicant is 90% qualified for a job, or whatever the number is, she will not apply. But if a male is even 10% qualified, they'll go ahead and hit apply like within 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So what can women do, professionally, personally? How do they overcome this?
It's a great question, and something that I have coached young women on, especially young professionals or even young mothers who are coming into the workforce. And to me, the only way to get away from the imposter syndrome is to have an ally. Let it be a male ally or a female ally, but have an ally. Because sometimes it is, you are looking at the mirror and you see what you want to see. And that is really what imposter syndrome is. You think that this is what you are seeing, but somebody else looks at you from a totally different perspectives. Taking some lines from Bridgerton, I truly believe that everybody is a diamond, okay?
Yes.
And the diamond has different facets, right? So it depends on who is looking at you, right? And I will, again, I seem to be telling a lot of stories, but I will tell you a story from a very personal experience and impact. So I went to law school in India, and somehow my batch from the Delhi Law School had a lot of people who were either big lawyers' kids or judges' kids. And as I was graduating, all of these people, mostly men, were applying to colleges in the US to come for their LLM. I was one of the top 1% of the students. I didn't even think about it. And I had a friend of mine, and till today, I credit her for where I am today. She just looked at me and she said, Suja, why the heck are you not applying? And I still remember having this conversation saying, I'm not going to get in. And she's like, no, but you need to apply. You're better than most of them. And if she had not told me that, right? And if she had not looked at me from those glasses, I probably would have never applied and come to the US on a full fellowship, right? And so to me, and I have always kept that as something that is valuable And the only way to, I don't think there is any way you can get over the imposter syndrome if you keep looking at the mirror. You need to build allies when there are big decisions, when there are big, there is a job that you think you're interested in and you have that self-doubt. Reach out to an ally. Ask them, hey, let it be professional, let it be personal. I truly believe that you need to have those people in your life that will look at it from a different perspective and probably get rid of the mirror and then give you a different mirror to look at.
I so agree with that. And, I have benefited from having an ally. Uh, a couple of them that were women that brought me back into the education system, which was uh, in several ways stepping stones to where I am and who I am today. So couldn't agree more with you. This brings me back to kind of tying it back to some of the earlier conversation we had around societal norms and these roles. How do we go about changing and challenging the gender roles, especially these norms, and who plays what role? What's I mean, I'm sure you've given it some thought. I would love to hear your take on this.
Oh, I don't know if there's an easy answer to this, right? I think it's years and years and years of conditioning, right? And we can only do this one drop in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, that too, right? um, I think, when you're looking at the society, right? I think the first thing we need to stop doing is shaming somebody for what they think they should be doing. Mm-hmm. By that, what do I mean? For example, if I am working as much as my husband is, and I am expected to come home and cook, but I don't feel like it, yes, stop shaming me into believing that, oh, I'm not feeding my family healthy, and therefore something is going to happen, right? I think we need to really think about what are we questioning? Who is the, primary caretaker? I think it needs to start from there. But for some reason, over years, we have always had the woman as the so-called primary caretaker of a household, and I think we need to stop doing that. The caretakers are everybody who lives in the house, including the children, right? And so to me, questioning some of those inside your house to say, okay, if I don't feel like cooking or I don't feel like cleaning, maybe somebody else needs to take that responsibility to do that. And don't make me feel guilty or shame me because I'm not doing it and I haven't done it 3 days in a row. That should be okay,
I chuckle a bit because and this is me. I've never cooked in my life, and this is going out to the world. And I almost believe there should be some shaming on the other end, where people like me do not go around and show off that I've never cooked in my life. In fact, there was one instance where I turned on the gas because I had to heat something so I could feed my 2 daughters. My wife was out doing a half marathon or something, and this was a few years ago, and my girls were shocked and surprised. They're like, you know how to turn on the gas? So I think there should be some shaming involved, especially where I'm concerned, to bring in that equality, right? That equity, in saying that, why should someone look at someone and say, hey, this is your responsibility? It shouldn't be. We all live in the home, and we should be equally vested in helping each other out in whichever way, shape, or form. So we should, of course, it makes sense to have your own set of things that you excel at, you love, you want to do, but on a certain day you don't feel like it. Hey,
Yeah.
let me wear your hat today, right?
Yeah.
So,
I really recently I read a Bene Brown
yeah,
interview,
yes,
and it was very interesting how she quantified it by saying
mhm,
that, my husband and I quantify how we are doing that day, right? And she says, some days he'll come home and say, I'm 20%, and I'm okay to take that 80%, right?
yes,
And we are 100%, right? And some days we are, he's 20%, I'm 20%, and he is also 20%. Then we sit in the table and say, okay, what is the task that we don't have to do so that we are both 100%? And I just thought, that was so interesting, because that then takes away, the unkindness and the judgment that
yes.
comes with this. You are expected, but you don't feel like it, and then something is wrong. So I just thought that was very interesting way of communicating, but also being kind to one another, in a family, in society. And
Mhm.
you see that all the time, right? I mean, you come into work some days, you're like, okay, I got this.
Yes.
And sometimes you're like, okay, I don't even want to talk to anybody, leave me alone. And why not? I mean, why can't we extend that to when it comes to personal and family
True.
relationships?
And in fact, it's even more important in a family where
Yeah.
you can and you choose to be transparent with the
Mm-hmm.
people you love and share your home with. And I find that to be, I remember reading that a few years ago, and it was so simple
Mm-hmm.
in its execution that you almost forget that this is something you should do, because
Mm-hmm.
it brings the rest of the home, the rest of the family, and relatives, friends who have you kind of come closer to you, right?
Yeah.
Because you're sharing who you are today and how you feel
Mm-hmm.
in this moment. And if there is ability, other people can step up. We just
Mm-hmm.
have to allow them to.
Yeah.
So yeah, bringing this back to how do we, change this? It is one drop in the ocean, but you know, a lot of drops that need to get added pretty quickly here, because it's a challenge.
Yes.
Uh, and as we work on that as a community where both men and women play a role in helping this forward, what what can women specifically do to help each other, uh, especially when it comes to, you kind of mentioned a couple of the things, being an ally, just being there when it comes to uh, showing you a different kind of mirror. Are there specifics that you could share with other women that could reach out and uh, give an extension of a hand to others who may not be aware of a lot of these things that you have given a lot of thought to?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, that's a great question. I really think sometimes we are victims of our own doing. Over years, we have taken the avatar of I can do everything because I'm a super person,
Yes.
right? And I think we do not allow others to come in and help us.
Mhm.
And I think that is probably my biggest advice is, you are not a bad mom, a
Mhm.
daughter, a child, a wife, if you are not able to do everything
Yes.
all the time, right? And so learn to raise your hand and say, hey, just cannot happen
Mhm.
because I cannot fold the towels because I'm doing something else. So somebody help me, right?
Yes.
I We don't do it, and again, I'm telling you a story because I learned it the hard way.
Mhm.
When I was a young mother of this 3-year-old who was going to a private preschool, I was probably the only working mother because everybody else, we were in Indianapolis, which, again, I was the only working mom.
Right.
And I remember several times I would go on a business trip to Europe, take a flight when my company allowed business class tickets, come back in economy because I wanted to be back for an event that had to be done after 1 hour of getting off a flight, right? For my child. And there was a time when I just, and this was an advice that I got from a person who saw me do this. And she said, you know what? You are not present because you're jet lagged. You're tired. You've traveled, 8-hour flight, changing in some airport to get to this event. What are you doing? And then that was when I sat down with my husband and kids and I said, okay, if I'm traveling 5 events in a year where mommy has to be there, pick those 5 events. Okay. So there was already an agreement between me and my daughter that's saying that, okay, mommy hell-bent, if I have to take an economy ticket and get back for that one of those 5 events, I will be there. But the rest all were optional. But I did that for years, and put that pressure on myself because I was like, I would be the worst mom if I didn't show up for this. So I think just to kind of tie it up, I think we need to give up permission to be imperfect.
Yes.
And give ourselves the permission to say, hey, I cannot do it. And it's okay not to do it. Empowerment again.
Yes. I was just about to say that, it has to start from within. It has to be, you have to accept it. You have to come to terms with it. You have to say, yes, this is okay. This is fine. Right? So I agree 100% with you. Now, in terms of, as we are sharing some advice, I would love to turn your attention and focus on women who are starting their careers now. What kind of advice would you have for them? And it doesn't have to be, some that are just entering the workforce, some that have been here for a few years. What are some specific tools or advice would you want to share with them?
I think for me, and the reason I say this, as I said, I have a 21-year-old who's entering the workforce. Not that she listens to my advice, but okay, that's a different issue. But I think, keep an open mind. There are so many more opportunities than what were there 30 years ago when I entered the workforce, and there are so many different things that you can do. So keep an open mind, but also ask for help. You don't know everything. You don't need to know everything. And I would say build those allies within and outside work.
I love that. Simple, short, sweet. That's typically the attention span of.
Yes.
I can resonate with that. I'm one of them. I'm kidding. But Suja, thank you so much. I had an amazing time learning from you, and I'm sure so will a lot of others. I want to put a brief plug about SAHARA, who we are and what we do. As you know, we are helping victims of abuse, primarily South Asians, again, primarily in Southern California. If anyone in the audience knows someone who needs help, or on the other end, has a story they want to share, please get in touch with us at saharacares.org. Suja, thank you once again for taking the time to be with us, to share your lessons, your journey, and helping us empower women so there is true equity in the community.
Thank you so much, Nitin. This has been a lot of fun. It also gave me some food of thought for some of the things. So thank you. Thank you so much again.